Hello.
Hello. All right. So we'll walk through it, but like general thoughts on Leviathan.
You do yours first, and I'll do mine afterwards.
I think we figured out the fight pretty well. In general, I think so there was one thing that held us up for a while. We got to like the like black smokers phase, and I realized that I was getting shit on there, and I just used like way too many cooldowns on the so like every time you soak a tank thing on this fight, there's so little tank damage that you could actually just pop every single defensive on everything in the fight except for the one right before black smokers, and it took us like 3 times getting there before I realized that we should use an invuln there and just save all of our cities on that side to make healing way easier. So I think that probably took longer than it should have, but I think we aced like the debuff Nance phases. I think we got there, we identified the length of the cooldowns, saw, and I think figured out very quickly how they were supposed to work. We had a little bit of a mix up on the first one, I think, but I think we did the second one fast. It actually really reminded me of Eternal Palace on Ashara when I made the there was like a dance on Ashara. It's kind of hard to explain it without showing it. I can maybe show it after this thing, but like it was an intermission where everyone in the raid got 2 debuffs, and you had to match them up with what they were doing to like make it kind of work with positioning, and that was something that we did in progression, and it reminded me a lot of that, in specifically the debuff dance of like seeing the timers on everyone's thing and trying to figure out exactly when they would happen and like what the order of mechanics were. They were called decrees.
Yeah, the way that you resolved that was, well, sorry, not resolved, but problem solved that was very methodical and kind of the way that people are encouraged to solve these ones. Like this Tsunami 2 specifically is kind of like baby's first debuff gauntlet mechanic that you guys will have seen, but it's a very good one and a very solid example of how those sorts of mechanics resolve in this game. And you solved it the correct way. You broke things down one by one. You looked at the order of resolution, what were the requirements for each next step to happen, etc. There was one problem that I saw with it, and that was that your initial pull, while you had fantastic footage, you did it in a way that meant that you spent a little bit too long on sundering because you didn't quite have the footage because you were all stacked. The very first time that you guys saw Tsunami.
Oh yeah, that took us a long time.
Yeah. And that right there would have been solved by simply being spread out so that you would have seen virtually everything. You would have seen people getting hit by the sundering. You would have seen people being, exactly the direction that it went, whether it was a frontal, whether it was directed at the boss, and you could have tested afterwards, all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. So what we could have done if we would have just simply had the mindset of, oh, a new mechanic is happening, everyone spread the fuck out and see what happens. A few people would have been shot forward. A few people would have not been affected. Or if the mechanic worked differently, you would have seen people get blasted to the left or right all at one time instead of being stacked. So us being stacked actually minimized our gain there. I actually did something with that later in the fight for the exact thinking that you're saying. Let me see if I can find it in the actual VOD before I play through. So this mechanic, when we got the one right before the second Tsunami phase, the first time we got there, I knew we had more time in the platform, so I was just going to try to put it in a different spot, and I kind of randomly lucked into figuring out you could put them on the sides right before they go away. But it was because of that thinking of like, let's do something different and see what happens kind of thing, or spread out. So it's like the same philosophy.
Right. Yeah. I actually noticed Cams was doing that at the start of Tsunami Cast while you guys were figuring things out, which is like just really good intuition. That's Final Fantasy IQ right there.
Yeah, I also said at the same time, the first time we saw the calm phase, I just said for everyone to spread because I didn't know what it was. It was like on our third. It was the first time we saw the enrage. When we saw the calm, the first thing we said was to just everyone spread out. So.
Yeah, that's the correct call in 99% of cases. If you see a new cast bar, you have no idea what it's going to do. Not being on top of a tank is a good start, especially on a big boss like this, right? Like when half the arena is the boss's hitbox, you have a lot of room to be spread out and not like having to disengage. So it makes it very easy for things like this.
Also, this is I know I've mentioned this in all of our little reviews about how you get better at playing the game, and in all of these, where I think I at least felt like I leveled up my play on this was, and I even said it on the kill video where I asked him to delay his trick thing by like 2 seconds because I know I got desynced. I started focusing much more on actually lining up all my cooldowns with all of the party cooldowns. Like, do you guys see on my UI down here? It has like his 1 minute thing, all the 2 minute cooldowns, and I've been like lining up all of my damage around those. It's the one below my health bar here that I'm showing. So that was something that I feel like I actually am paying attention to now, where before I was just kind of ripping it on CD and not paying attention.
Yep, exactly. That is the Final Fantasy damage profile right there. That's exactly how it plays. Everything is about those numbers.
Yeah.
Something you guys actually did really, really well is your marker usage was like really good.
Yeah.
And now called it on the like second pull that he wanted to fix it and have it be a very specific way.
No, it was Max.
And
it was wasn't it no, what Now did was Now did,
that's right.
No, Now did the opposite. What Now said was we had it like this in the front where it's purple, red, yellow, blue, but it wasn't because he's a number. Just for reference, absolutely none of us look at letters or numbers, just so that's clear. We look at no one. What it was C was 3 and 3 is a square, and he said the front ones are all circles. As you can see, they're all circles, and the right one was a square, and he said that was fucking his vibe. So we changed it to the back one, but it was Ninja Max, aka Ninjesus, aka Mudra Messiah. He has it. He said, "Oh, shouldn't we in the back? Let me see if I can get a better POV. It'd be right before we pull."
Yeah, where you had the alternating lines.
Yeah, I'm pretty
color coordinated.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I screamed that his brain was fat for like 5 minutes because of this. So basically, if for people in the chat who aren't aware of what we're talking about, what we had before was we had red here and red here where my mouse is, and then yellow and yellow. But he suggested we should inverse all the markers. So when you're calling the safe spot as red, it's true for both the front and back, rather than people having to learn different color combos, which was insanely valuable, I think, for later in the fight.
Yeah, that simplifies callouts a lot and really removes a lot of room for error there.
Okay, so first we figured the this out pretty quick, this phase, which was we were eating a lot of heavies though, but
yeah, like literally one of the things I have on my notepad is just all caps heavy gamers. You guys were so slow sometimes, but I mean it's fine, right? That this phase kind of exists as a recovery section because there's typically a mechanic right before it, and it's there as like pity, get people up and try not to end.
So this one was our call for tomato, but I think what we didn't do a good enough job of is planning your movements around that. So like if you see Maelstrom is starting, we move out of this one, that's fine. You identify the first spot that isn't safe, which is here, and then you see the second one. All right, at this exact moment, you know this corner is safe and you know a puddle's about to spawn right here. You should put yourself outside of this puddle right here. And if you need to move somewhere else, you would actually want to move, like you want to, you'll see on the next one when there's an extra puddle set. But you want to aim to move into old puddles because that spot is guaranteed to be safe, if that makes sense.
That is correct. Yes.
Or just move around them. But I didn't mention that because it seemed like too easy of a phase. Like if the entire group got heavy every single time, I don't think it would ever matter. Yes, it's a little raid damage, but you're already like raid healing here anyway. It's like probably the difference in like one extra heal cast.
Yeah, and the only time it really matters is if you get hit by the first puddle expanding and then you can't dodge the third dive. That's kind of the only time that'll actually punish you.
Yeah.
There's no movement mechanics directly after a Maelstrom, nothing like that, so it's worth not ever talking about.
Okay, and then we get this. So this was one thing. We actually stopped doing it near the end, but our first strat here for this knocking us back was having the left side group be to the left and the right side group be to the right. So after this happens, it's not as far of a run to the left and right, because we actually lost people a few times because we were in the middle and didn't make it to the left or right in time. And I didn't care to like reinforce it because we were making it consistently, but it definitely, like, look how wide it is. Look at my mouse. It is more than the entire like middle that is going to get knocked away. So you could be pre-positioned. You could actually already be on your sides if you wanted to, and it would just knock you on your side.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you just need to know that you're moving over there in advance if you're not pre-positioned. It's a pretty straightforward mechanic there. Just the being at the sides is good for while you're learning because you won't necessarily be remembering ahead of time, oh shit, I need to be moving. But once you've established that mechanic, it's pretty easy to remember every time.
Also, something we were doing really poorly on the first day as we were learning it, and then when we came back on the second day, is we were much better about actually lining up addles and reprisals for important damage events instead of just ones that happen. So like we started moving them off of a lot of tidal surges or tidal roars and putting them on like tsunamis, because like I feel like even just for like a healer's mental, you know?
Yeah,
just
Tsunami
like,
is big damage. Tidal roars are just there to punish mistakes that have already happened. It's like a 60%-ish HP damage on casters and or your DPS and healers. So it's not that bad, but the Tsunami is death without mitigation. One shot.
Yeah, and also like every time Tsunami happens, you're usually about to do something important too. So having the raid topped faster probably also increases the like cognitive level of thinking within healers too. Like I feel like a healer is so much more comfortable in what's around them when the raid is topped versus when they're spamming them at 20%, right? I think
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
also something too.
That's probably a Final Fantasy difference as well, though. Like because of the very, very controlled and consistent nature of incoming damage, you can teach yourself to be used to that, right? Like right now, there was no need for them to heal for a really long time until this tidal wave hits, and it's only 30k, right? You're still not taking damage. Regens could be ticking up this whole time. It's probably almost certainly a WoW carryover that I need to have people healed, but because there's no damage for a really long time, you don't need to be top right now.
Yeah.
Again, the next incoming damage is just spread markers here, which is not a big hit either.
Now, what you're mentioning is actually interesting because that is a high level WoW healer thing. That is something, what you just mentioned is something that a low level or new WoW healer would never do, but something that high level WoW healers do all the time, which is exactly what you said. There's no rush to heal people up if there's no incoming damage in the near future. Like on the prime example of that is the hidden mythic phase in N'Zoth, where you went down and our Resto Shaman topped healing, and most casuals are like, wow, Resto Shaman's so good. But in reality, 3 of our healers were only doing damage for multiple minutes because we knew we only actually needed 1 healer using throughput to actually keep us top throughout the phase because it was so easy. However, newer WoW players or lower level WoW players, healers never think like that. If you're below 100%, they're healing. So generally speaking, you're very right. But in Final Fantasy, it's very, very amplified, especially because in Final Fantasy, healers can do much more damage on average when they're not healing.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
One thing we never really made use of Now's Vuln. We used it in like the second intermission. Let's talk about this first. This, we initially started a little bit farther to the left, and it was making our decision point a little left of the middle and made it harder to get to yellow, and it was also making people inch too far forward and putting lightning in between these 2 spots to run. And then we eventually moved it to the right afterwards. And I think we generally problem solved this one pretty fast, although it's not too difficult.
So
go ahead.
This one here was interesting because you did problem solve it very quickly, but the execution took probably longer than you guys would have liked, I think. You had a workable strat, like the one where you started on the marker was absolutely fine. It was just a matter of everyone being comfortable and familiar with it and not being scared of AoEs under their feet that aren't about to resolve just yet. So that one, like, even while you guys were still progressing, the end of Tsunami 2 was a problem for people. You were losing 1 or 2 consistently through this. Yeah. And you often lose like half of your pulls even.
I noticed it too. We lost 2 pulls to this too, which I found fascinating. And this is kind of goes against like my philosophy of doing this versus like a Final Fantasy raids. I like to call the safe spots so people don't have to think about it as much. But what happened was Now got the AoE that I just got here. And Now got this like 5 pulls in a row. So I was just like, all right, it always goes in the tank with second threat. And then I started getting it, and when I started getting it, I stopped calling the safe spot. And then when that happened for 3 straight pulls, we just lost people because I got it 3 times in a row. And then once we swapped Nagura and Now to calling it if I got this mechanic, we virtually had 0 deaths after that point. So I think it was just the way this group is coded and operated right now. Me getting this mechanic, because like this is like, this is kind of a deeper conversation, but like why raid leading is different between the 2 games, specifically in WoW. Tanks are often actually doing a completely different version of the fight than other people. So it's actually a horrible raid leading role because while you're in the raid, you want to be calling mechanics that you're actively thinking about. This is a perfect example of that. It's very hard for me, this exact moment right here that I get this mechanic, it's very hard for me to call directions for other people and still think about where I'm going because it's the literal opposite and it can lead to bad calls or myself making a mistake, right? So that is a scenario where like divvying it up to other people whenever this happens is actually like a really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the call out, like your markers did work for this, so the call out should have been easy enough. But I mean, like, you know, you guys figured it out in the end how to resolve it your own way, and I can actually say the strat you use for that is literally exactly the same as what everyone else in the game uses. Oh,
in this specific phase, is that true for the first Tsunami phase?
First Tsunami is kind of binary. Like the only differences that you guys really have is whether you get knocked forward or back, because you never did one thing, and that's test just how far Sundering pushes you.
Okay.
Because you can stand at max melee and keep full uptime and not get knocked off the platform.
Yeah. Okay.
So all that does
yeah.
is it meant that you lost a little bit of uptime, which is like it's whatever, right? The check is fairly easy in this fight. I think you guys
Yeah.
found that. And Tsunami 2 was similar, right? Like there's only a couple ways that those mechanics can resolve and work. And there are like minute differences which don't really make a difference, right? Whether it's the tank running forward or the tank running back or both tanks baiting and soaking, it's kind of, it's whatever. You did make it a little harder by having 2-3 stacks. So there was a bit of a learning curve there.
Oh,
terms of how to
second
mitigate that correctly.
second Tsunami? Let me skip
right
ahead to that. Okay, so this is the thing I was talking about before. When we found this out, the poll, this was trying to think like Final Fantasy. I was like, okay, we have a full platform. We're in our normal spread spots. And then I was just like, oh shit, I'm just going to like try something. And I went to the edge and then mine was off and everyone else was on. So that was like, we didn't have to spend too much time on this. Because I feel like doing the next Tsunami phase with things on the platform would have been fucking miserable looking at it the other way. So second Tsunami, yeah, we decided to have like, because I feel like what you could do is you could have had it to where each cone hit one person instead of one tank taking two, because there wasn't a magic vuln involved, so he didn't actually have to invuln, but like it was pretty spicy amount of health, so like invuln was safe. But that was the only thing I could think of. Could you have? So what's the strat for getting 4 in each?
For getting 4 in each, you simply have the tanks and healers, or the similar split to what you had, where you have the person with the initial knockback go to the other stack, and then after that, all you do is you put one tank in each soak, and the tanks run forward, like to the front of the room towards A and B from here.
Okay.
And the other 2 people run back a little bit behind the people with cones. And that means that the person on the right with the cone is going to target the tank at A. The person on the left with the cone is going to target the person at B.
Okay. And then
so
you just have you just have one tank hit each. Okay.
Yeah. So that utilizes easier damage on the soak. You have like a little bit more damage on the tank, obviously, because they're getting hit by the stack before that, but it doesn't matter, right? It's all very survivable and very manageable. And the other difference there is you can have like a push back and then forward, or a push forward and then back, and ultimately it's like that's irrelevant, right?
Oh, this part. This fight was a great learning experience, and the first one we've encountered where you frequently have to run into mechanics that are on your screen after the telegraph has gone off. And that is, among all of the things that carry over from playing a lot of time in another MMO, it's fucking weird. It's very, very weird to forcibly run your character into a giant animation that should kill you, and it doesn't. It's just very specific to this game.
I think you're already figuring out in E4S that is something you're going to have to get used to.
Yeah. So this happens. Oh, so this is the one that we were talking about earlier. I got it here, and that allows us to like save every cooldown. That makes this next phase so easy, because I still go to like 30% after like all my cooldowns. So it's definitely very helpful. This happens. We go to our sides. This, I imagine, is there another strat to this? I feel like this is all you can do, right? Have tanks go to the back, and each side soaks at the front with all their people.
Yeah, it's possible to do full uptime for this, although a little spook in terms of like mitigation planning and things like that.
Oh, so they go to the corner and then
thing.
I stand right here?
Yeah, that's
that works?
Essentially.
Okay.
I don't know the exact damage ranges for it anymore, because it's been like 2 years since I did this fight, but there are strats like that can happen. Fall off damage in this game is very inconsistent about whether there's a threshold and then all of a sudden it's livable, and anything before that is death, or sometimes it's like very, very evenly staggered damage fall off. And it's just a case-by-case basis. You did the correct thing for a Brutian environment, for sure, just by playing it safe there.
So, and then this was new. These pools, like the first pool we saw them, we were like, okay, what's going on here? We saw one go down, and then we saw it blow up, and we saw a damage down happen on everyone in the raids. We're like, okay, we did something wrong. So the damage down was nice. That was a huge indicator that something had gone awry. And then we were like, okay, well, no one was in that pool, and it exploded and killed everyone. I think on the next poll, we had one side try having one person go in the pool, and then the other side have everyone go in the pool. So we learned very quickly that it was a one-person soak.
Yep.
And the magic vuln. Now we figured out that it could be soaked by 2 people. We ended up using 3 with the line person only dropping them and the other 2 people rotating soaking. Is that the correct way to do it, or is there another intricate way of doing it?
Typically it goes healer, melee, healer, beta.
Oh, okay,
so have
healer,
all 3 do it.
Yeah, and healer soaks the first one, melee soaks the second one, healer soaks the third one, and the person with the line can soak the last one. Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed here is on previous fights, I was hard coded into my brain to stop the Blackest Night on myself or other people a lot because it just wasn't breaking outside of like raid AoEs on DPS. And so what I got in a habit of is just pooling Edge of Shadows and just ripping Edge of Shadows in my like burst windows with Trick up. And on this fight, I noticed that the boss does usually 3 melees in between mechanics, or like the little water here he shoots at tanks. He does 3 of those in between casts, and if you don't Blackest Night the first one, it won't break. So you have to Blackest Night right before the first one. If you do it like after the first one, 2 will hit you and it won't break, and then it'll expire before the raid AoE. So I was getting better at actually realizing of when you could actually make use of Black Knight on a personal level to make it useful. Although, because I've been used to like already doing like obviously like mouse overing it on DPS and stuff, using it on raid AoEs. But and what I've been doing now is pooling a free Edge of Shadow for my burn by using it at some point earlier, just to get more things inside of the thing. And then this was pretty easy. The first time we got here, we just saw the column and we were like, all right, the fuck's going on? Who knows what's going on? And then as soon as this cast finished, I think he gets his damage up here. Or is it after his first cast? No, there it is. Because I noticed the last time I saw this debuff on the boss, it was E2S and it was after he cast Quietus. So I was like, okay, this is a fucking soft and rage. I think I said that the first time we got here. But and then we just did a normal cooldown chain. I think all I did was have 1 reprisal for the first Tidal Rage. Before the second Tidal Rage, we used both Tank and Volns plus an Addle to last through the second and the third. Because I think our healer CDs are down here, except for this one. And I think that was relatively good cooldown management. I think we barely live this one, if I remember.
Yeah, with the ramping damage stacks, it's just you need to, progressively increase mitigation. And the thing about this one as well is that there's also, somewhat semi-frequent, just smaller raid-wide damage going off as well, which you didn't have throughout the rest of the fight. So you'll see that there's like small ticks for damage on you, which is obviously bigger ticks on everyone else, which is doing things like stripping shields and things like that. It's just a pretty light heal check.
All right, hell yeah. Any other thoughts you thought were, or things you thought were interesting?
There were a few things actually.
Okay.
The very first one was that it took you guys like 7 hours to figure out that the lyrics are just Leviathan repeated for the entirety of the song.
Are you talking about the eating fruit thing? Or buying fruit?
I don't like. You guys went through a series of different like theories on what the lyrics were to the song and the background music. But yeah, it was just Leviathan all along. All you had to do was read the boss name.
I didn't know his name was Leviathan until right now. I thought his name was just E3S.
Oh, his name is Leviathan. He's a big water noodle.
I'm surprised I didn't die to this.
Oh yeah, that's because that's supposed to go on tanks, right? So the tanks are taking that damage. So you're the only one who could live that.
Wait, did I get hit by it?
Oh yeah, you did.
Yeah, I was going to say. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Because I didn't save a charge for this, and then I was like, oh, this isn't good.
Yeah, so the other way that people can do that is to do the first knockback pushes everyone forward, and then the second knockback pushes only now back. So that cleanses everyone's thing, and then it means that you aren't having to be behind everyone and then run further towards the front to not get hit by that, right?
Wait. Okay, so we were under the impression that Sundering Tsunami... We never tested it, but we were under the impression that your Sundering Tsunami going off does not actually get rid of your debuff.
No, but you would get hit by the first one.
Oh, yay. I see. Yeah. But wouldn't the person who had the first Sundering need to get hit by mine as well?
Yes.
And then he would have to just go forward.
Yeah. So it's one person.
Yeah, so one person instead of... Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It's just, there's like a lot of different ways you can, change those things around, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? All that matters is that boss dies and you don't.
Yeah, very, very, I think very easy DPS check, generally speaking. I assume that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah.